Welcome, everyone. My name is Davin Chitwood. I'm the sales executive here at Kirkham Irontech, and I'm here with our founder and CEO, Tom Kirkham. And Tom, today I'd like to talk about what are the three pillars of effective security and IT management.
That's a terrific question, and it's something that, as far as I know, no other managed security services provider is really getting into the in-depth process of understanding what it means to have peak performance when it comes to successful IT management, cybersecurity, and the key components of those, and in fact, they don't even work, is, for lack of a better term, it's governance. These are the policies and regulations and administrative controls that really allow those three things to be these pillars, right? You know, people come to us as a technology security company, and they assume, rightfully so, right? Anyone knows how to properly manage IT equipment, servers, workstations, laptops. They know how to properly secure them. If they're security specialists, they know to make security job one. In other words, not trading security in the name of productivity and efficiency. But we go into it a little bit farther because we talk about things like budgeting and benchmarking, like benchmarking against your peers. You know, what do other companies like yours in your industry, what do they spend? Why do they spend it? What are their priorities? So just from a budgetary standpoint, most professional services firms, and I'm talking about law firms, accounting firms, and the list goes on and on. You're really selling expertise, right? Generally speaking, and it varies. Some of it varies. Surprisingly, the actual dollar amount doesn't, but as a percentage of revenue, and sometimes we get pushback, you know, especially from prospects. They don't want to share their revenue numbers, but it is an important delta. But we can still give you the benchmarks, and you don't have to share those numbers with you. But basically what it boils down to is you should be spending in a professional service company, not a manufacturer or other industries, but in a professional services company, it's about 10% of your gross revenues on both cybersecurity and IT. So the reason benchmarks are so important is you may not be getting peak performance out of your investment in IT, or you may be not as secure as you should be compared to your peers, right? And that's important because that establishes that what we recommend from cybersecurity and IT, it's not just our opinion. It's not just because we sell it. We don't sell everything that we have to anyone. We don't even use everything that's in our stacks, right? Our tech stacks and our cybersecurity stacks. But from an IT perspective, that investment in IT is all about improving the bottom line, improving the top line, being more productive and efficient. And that's what it's been for, you know, since the invention of the PC days, so arguably even before that. But and it works out to about $5,700 per employee per year. That's for cybersecurity and IT total. And that number doesn't vary on the size of the firm, by the way. That $5,700 is pretty standard. And it does work out usually to about 10% of the gross revenues. And the actual stats are 6 to 14%. But if you're underspending on your IT investments, you know, you're running your servers into the ground, you're eking out every day that you can continue to use these PCs, switches, routers, wireless access points, and all of these different things. You're not at peak performance on that investment. So in reality, if you're only spending 5% of your gross revenue, or you're only spending $4,000 per employee, you have gaps where you're not realizing the maximum performance of that IT investment, that peak performance. You know, running servers into the ground, running workstations into the ground, that costs money and productivity. You could end up with data loss. that you could end up being down. You know, the objective is to replace these devices before they reach their end of life. You need to retire them and have a plan for that and budget for those. Now, $5,700 or 10% of your gross revenue, your cybersecurity budget should be 10% of your overall cybersecurity and IT budget. So you should be spending about $560, $570 per employee per year for things like AI-based endpoint protection. You know, get rid of antivirus. That's old technology. You know, maybe continuous cybersecurity awareness training that cuts your risk in half. And that's what our three pillars are. That's the method that we use when we do assessments for people. And it really gives them not only does it give them a big picture scenario, but if you're in an organization that has multiple decision makers, you know, you got a financial officer, you have a marketing officer, you got an ops person, it changes the way everyone, especially the CEO or the president or the owner, it reframes the question in their mind and takes this treatment of those two investments, it takes it out of the realm of an expense. Okay, I'm all about not spending money you don't have to. I understand that you want to minimize those expenses, but you really need to treat it as an investment. You need to know what the benchmarks are and respond accordingly. Now, if you can do it for 7% overall, I'm cool with that, as long as you're investing properly in both cybersecurity and IT. But it does reframe the question. And if you are a CIO or a chief information security officer, this helps you make the case for increasing investments. And this is win-win-win for everyone: your company, your career, your clients and customers, maybe your vendors, and maybe other stakeholders in your organization. And from our perspective, and one of our core values is to make sure that clients and prospects truly understand the reasons why we make these recommendations. It's not about maximizing the monthly bill. That's not what it's about. In all honesty, some IT companies are cheap to a fault. You know, they're not giving them the benchmark numbers for what they should be spending.
Best in practice tools and services.
Well, that's a different deal. You know, we're best in class and best practices on top of all of those other things. But it is best practices to benchmark and budget and all the other administrative things to get that peak performance. You know, if you're a manufacturer, you know what the ROI is if you invest in a $10 million machine. You got to calculate it down to the penny. You probably know what the lifespan of it's going to be and when you're going to have to replace that. And so everyone needs to treat IT and cybersecurity the same way, especially professional service firms, because your biggest expense is people. So if you're paying somebody, it doesn't matter if you're paying them $20 an hour or $100 an hour, or they're earning $1,000 an hour for the firm, that investment in those people is not going to be as effective if they're hamstrung by IT expenditures or you're not secure. Not to even mention the fatal component of a cybersecurity breach.
The cost associated, the reputation. The list goes on and on and on.
Yeah, well, you know, one of the deals on one of our slides, some of you may have seen it, but it's, you know, being proactive about cybersecurity is 4 to 5 times less expensive to be defensive rather than, you know, offensive or after the fact. And in fact, if you realize that about half the companies go out of business in a couple of years because of a significant breach, those numbers don't even work. I mean, what price are you going to put on the company? And that's what cybersecurity is truly about. And it's the cost of doing business anymore these days. So,
and especially as a business owner, maybe you've started their business themselves from scratch, and now they've worked for the past 20, 30 years to build this business. And now simply because maybe they didn't implement cybersecurity training, an employee clicked on a link and now they're going out of business in the next year, 6 months, 2 years. Overall, that 20 years of hard effort and work just gone in seconds.
Yeah. And if you are one of those entrepreneurs that started your business out of your basement, or, whatever cliche you want to use, the garage or whatever, you're really highly in tune to controlling expenses, right? Yeah. And what we're saying is that's all really good. That's what a good leader should be doing. It's what a good manager should be doing. But there are other things that are best practices as companies grow. Yeah. And the funny thing is we're seeing this on the hacker side. These hackers have businesses.
Oh, yeah.
And now we're seeing them on the dark web chatting about HR problems and administrative overhead and rent expenses. It's kind of interesting to see that industry kind of mature. Mm-hmm. Of course, it makes our life a nightmare, and it increases everyone's risk because they're built to scale, right? This is big volume attacks to anybody, and everyone knows there's no such thing as being too small. It's just a numbers game to them. But yeah, that's something that we really are investing a lot of time and energy in to elevate the discussion. So the CEO is not operating in a vacuum, or the chief financial officer says, well, we can't budget more than 4% for IT expenditures. Well, wait a minute. Don't you want to increase the profitability?
Yeah. And that's,
well, all right, that reframes it in his mind. See, it's it's best practices, as I've said over and over again.
And these three pillars, it's like you said, no one else is, from our knowledge so far, no one else is having this mindset, this concept of this idea of these three pillars, and really breaking it down for these companies, understanding, hey, what do you have at the moment regarding your IT? What are you missing? What are those potential vulnerabilities? What are those potential gaps? And then you take all that information, and you mentioned an assessment. We do offer that free security and risk assessment, that IT assessment, and we incorporate these three pillars to help you understand, okay, this is what you have at the moment. Maybe you're at this benchmark. We're going to help you get here. We're going to help you get that productivity, the most productivity out of your current network. And over time, maybe you mentioned someone maybe at 4%. Okay, you're not at the proper benchmark. Maybe you need to be at 7%. That's not going to happen overnight. And so we work with organizations to help you build a plan to get to those proper benchmarks, to get the most productivity out of your IT network, and make sure you have the security first culture that you're wanting, or overall that you're going to have in the next year with the increase in cyber attacks and cyber risk. And so it's an intensive and deep, thoughtful process that we go through with these organizations. But now in today's business, it's needed. It's necessary.
And I just want to add to that free assessment thing. Our method is very extensive, and it's very time consuming. Now, we know that we have competitors that wouldn't even dream of doing it for free.
Oh my goodness. Yeah.
If you're a $10 million company or a $50 million company, we're going to literally spend hours and hours and hours. And this audit and this assessment and the ongoing relationship we have with our clients, just by itself, just functioning as a consultant, is worth thousands and thousands of dollars. That's part of being a Kirkham Irontech client.
Yep.
But the key thing is, if you go through one of these, it's going to be valuable to you, even if you don't become a client of ours. Yeah. It's really an eye opener, and I use this phrase way too much, but it reframes the questions, it reframes the thought that goes behind all of this, and it really bumps your business's maturity up to where you're running like a Fortune 500 or Fortune 1000, or I mean, and these principles apply regardless of the size of the organization. And that gets into a whole different subject, and maybe we'll do another video on that. Well, but just know that these assessments that we are doing at no charge are they're not 5-minute things. They're they're very intensive, and sometimes for some clients or prospects it takes months and months and months to walk through these things.
Yeah, but overall, if your goal as an organization is peak performance out of your IT and your overall security, overall your organization, that free assessment is something that I would, just from my professional opinion, highly look into, or just reach out and maybe you'll have some questions about the assessment, what all it takes and what all goes into it. Definitely feel free to reach out. Once again, it's a free assessment, but overall the goal is peak performance, and that's what we'll help you get to. Thank you all for tuning in today. We have more topics that we'll be talking on. And of course, if you have anything particular you want us to talk about, feel free to put in the comments, reach out, call, email. We'll be happy to talk about it in the future for you.